Okay, Eco 701, Lecture 08, and then there are two sets of slides, 09 and 10. So let's start with slide 09, Methods and Data. So this is your chapter 3, Methods and Data, the show and tell and how will you do it session, or chapter actually, strictly speaking. Okay. Methods, model, data, limitations. Okay. And the methods, the general purpose is to provide a plan. You see the keyword plan, description, and how the objectives of the study will be achieved. The word how is the most important keyword. So in other words, how are you going to achieve your research objective? So for instance, you want to investigate the impact of educational attainment on earnings. Then the how would be, oh, I would need to analyze the labor survey earnings data, education data. Then I will conduct some descriptive statistics and econometric analysis. Okay, and then that relates to the second bullet. It is the what, why, how of the research project, a step-by-step specification and description of what will be done, how it will be done, and why it will be done in a specified manner. So how it will be done, part could be influenced by the theory, the core theory you review in chapter 2. And if you have valid reason, you can modify the theory. So let me open a blank Word file. And then in addition, for the methods session of chapter 3, it is not surprising that you might have to use equation editor, and then you have to enter 1 or 2 econometric equations in case your research topic involves empirical data analysis. So remember the human capital theory from chapter 2? Let's say if I assume I go back to the example that I'm working on a research topic that earnings influenced by education. So from the human capital theory, you know that wage is a function of education, positive relationship, but then maybe in your chapter 3, methods, you have valid reasons. You need to modify the model, the human capital theory. Maybe because from the past empirical studies, we found out a non-linear relationship between education years and wage. So maybe I can modify the model as, for my econometric analysis, wage, and I can actually take log of wage. You can see this is another way to modify my model. It's a function of education and education square. Okay, so you see the inclusion of the square variable to capture non-linear relationship between education and wage. And you can see I take log, so I already modify the human capital theory twice actually, but I have valid reasons actually. Okay, and then in case you really want to insert an equation, just to give you an idea how to insert equation. So on Microsoft Word, insert equation. So now I can type my equation, log of wage equal the script. I think we have to use this one. And then we have to look for the beta 1 plus here, beta 2 education plus, I just want to simplify the equation. Strictly speaking, I have to include some gender dummies, provincial dummy, and so forth. And then I have to include education square to capture the non-linear relationship, actually convex relationship between education and wage. Okay, so this is an example that I have to make use of equation editor. Okay, I hope you are happy with that, and then we can go back to the slides. Okay, and I think this slide is self-explanatory. I would rather move on to slide number 6. Are you using primary data or secondary data? As I mentioned I think in the very first or second lectures, at honors level, I don't expect you to conduct your own interview to collect primary data. It is too much at honors level. Okay, but at honors level, you usually use secondary data or existing data, which is collected by someone else, such as the Reserve Bank, SARB, South African Reserve Bank time series macro data, the Stats SA cross-sectional data, even the global data, country level, World Bank, IMF. So these are the commonly used secondary data at honors level, even master's level. And then for the data session, you have to answer the following questions quite clearly, obviously in nicely written paragraphs. What is the name of the data set? You have to mention the name of the data set. This is a very basic requirement. Which institution conducts the survey? Is it SSA, Reserve Bank, or World Bank, and so forth? Frequency. How frequently is this survey conducted? Every quarter, annually, or every 5 years? I think in the case of South African census, it is now taking place every 10 years. Which years of data set do you plan to use? You are not going to use the last 10 census, maybe you use the last two, 2001 and 2011. Okay, the general profile of the survey, just to give a general idea, what kind of questions are asked in this survey. So maybe for the census, it asks questions on personal characteristics, a short session on labor market activities, and then maybe on household income and non-income welfare. And then the last paragraph, you are supposed to explain the specific profile of the survey. In other words, the standout feature of this data set that convince you. Why did you decide to use this data set? So if I go back to the example from a few lectures back, remember the research topic, examining non-income or non-money metric poverty by province, you remember that? Okay, then I would argue that I would use census because census asked many questions on non-income welfare, such as ownership of many assets, such as car ownership, dwelling, do you own a dwelling, and so forth. And then in addition, census asks a lot of questions on basic services delivery, such as water source, fuel source for cooking, frequency of refuse removal, sanitation facility, and postal services in the area. Even questions like, is there a light or lamp post, if I remember correctly, out in the street outside your residence? Okay. And then the limitations, you can insert a limitation sessions to, I think I also explained it in one of the earlier lectures. Just be honest to admit it is impossible to conduct certain types of analysis. Reasons either due to the data constraint, the data is not available, or you can just honestly say it is beyond the scope of this study, or maybe it is too complicated at honors level. Okay, so to conclude your chapter 3, I would recommend the following structure. I need to open a new Word file. What's going on here? So my recommendation is 3.1 would be the introduction. 3.2 would be the methods. 3.3 would be the data. 3.4, this is optional. Just think if there is really a need, limitations. Then the last one will be the conclusion before you move on to chapter 4, the empirical data analysis. Again, assuming your research essay does involve or require empirical data analysis. So I'm going to pause for 10 seconds. Okay. And then when you have time, you can go through the 3 examples, the past students example, and then if you go to the lecture speech notes, just follow the bullets. I'm going to explain all 3 examples, past students example, quite nicely than answering all the key questions about the methods and data actually. Okay, and then I think in the lecture speech notes, I'll give you another example about the key questions actually, that you need to answer. Why do you decide to use this data set actually? Okay, so you can also look at page 1 of the lecture speech notes. Okay. And then I'm done with the first set of slides, and then the second set of slides has to do with research ethics. I don't think there is much I need to do or cover. It's self-explanatory, except this slide number 3. When you use someone's words directly, word by word, you have to use double quotation mark. Otherwise, you would commit plagiarism. Alternatively, paraphrase. Use your own words to summarize the ideas by someone else. Okay. I think that's all from this set of slides, and then when you have time, you can look at the UWC research ethics policy, and again, it is quite a long document, so if you have time, please just focus on the text highlighted in yellow. Okay, I'll rely on your self-discipline to go through this document, And then for the writing workshops, okay, so this is an example. I provide you some information on the methods and data. I think it's relating to using income and expenditure survey to conduct poverty analysis. I want to do some descriptive stats and then econometric analysis. So let me pause for 30 seconds for you to go through the given information. Okay, and then this is an example. If I write it in a horrible, boring way, how would the paragraph or the session looks like? It is hopeless, actually. So this is a bad example. So this is how my bad version looks like. I will present some descriptive statistics table to compare the differences between poor and non-poor using poverty line of 300. Then I will run probit regression as follows. Poverty likelihood or poverty probability is a function of many explanatory variables. You can see I don't even list the explanatory variables clearly. And then the next paragraph, I decided to use the Income and Expenditure Survey IES 2010 and 20 dataset because the survey asks many questions on income and expenditure. So it is most ideal to use this dataset to examine money metric poverty. Okay, so I will pause for 30 seconds before I show you the answers. The eye-catching version of the answers. So let me pause for half a minute. Okay, now let's look at my eye-catching writing style, starting with the method session. The lower bound poverty line of 3,000 rand per capita per month, and then this is the constant, the base month 2020. I need to emphasize clearly constant prices, which I didn't do in the boring version, is used to distinguish poor from non-poor. This amount represents the expenditure needed to purchase the essential food and non-food items for survival. Once the two groups are distinguished, various descriptive statistics are presented to examine the personal and household level characteristics of each group. You can see I didn't mention these things in the bad version of the answers. Next, multivariate econometric analysis is conducted by means of a probit regression. In a probit regression, the dependent variable is binary. In our study, it stands for poverty status. In bracket, 1 stands for poor, 0 stands for non-poor. The independent or explanatory variables are as follows with reference category of each variable shown in brackets. Then you can see I use bullets. For these categorical variables, then I put the reference category in brackets. For instance, gender, bracket, reference category male. The other one, race, reference category Africans. But then for other variables like age, household size, number of employed members, number of household members receiving social grant, these are not categorical variables. They are continuous quantitative variables, so there is no reference category. Data. IES, conducted by StatsSA, is used for the study. IES, the frequency, every 5 years since the advent of democracy, and 6 waves have been conducted since the advent of democracy. The survey captures information on money metric and non-money metric information. And then more specifically, the standout feature of the IES, there are 22 sessions, 22 is quite a lot, that capture comprehensive information on expenditure. You can carry on reading the paragraph. The survey also captures information on income. Finally, in this study, I only used the last two available waves, 2010 and 2011, to find out the profile of the poor, if the profile of the poor changed significantly between the 2 years. Thereby answering the research questions, have the colored population been enjoying a significantly lower poverty likelihood in the 2010s decade? Research question as pointed out in chapter 1. Then you can see the limitations. Okay, IES does not capture information on non-money metric information.